Have you ever wondered how to survive in the wild with nothing but a pocket knife and a lighter? This might sound like a daunting scenario, but knowing how to effectively utilize the natural resources around you, like the humble pine tree, can make all the difference. Pine trees are not just aesthetically pleasing forest backdrops, they are veritable survival powerhouses, offering a range of uses that could potentially save your life. In the next few minutes, we will explore the versatility of the pine tree and how it can provide food, medicine, shelter, and fuel when you're in a pinch. Now, let's imagine you're in a survival situation. You've got the basics, a pocket knife and a lighter, but your backpack filled with essentials is nowhere to be found. It's here that your knowledge of the natural world becomes your most valuable tool. And one of the key players in this scenario might be standing tall and majestic right in front of you, the pine tree. These evergreen giants are more than just beautiful components of the wilderness. They are living, breathing survival kits ready to provide you with a host of essentials if you know how to tap into their bounty. And the best part? They're abundant in many parts of the world, making them a reliable resource when you're in a bind. From its needle-covered branches to its sturdy trunk, almost every part of the pine tree can be used for survival. Need shelter from the elements? The pine tree has got you covered. Literally, hungry and in need of sustenance? The pine tree can provide. Need medicine to treat wounds or alleviate pain? Once again, the pine tree can come to your rescue. And let's not forget about fuel. Whether you need to keep warm, cook food, or send a rescue signal, the pine tree can provide the necessary fuel to keep your fire burning. So next time you find yourself amidst the towering pines, remember, you're not just standing in a forest. You're surrounded by a host of life-saving resources just waiting to be utilized. Let's delve into the specifics, starting with how a pine tree can serve as a shelter. Imagine being lost in the woods, the cold creeping in, and the only thing you have is a pine tree. But that's not a problem. Nature has provided you with a ready-made shelter. Pine trees are nature's gift to the lost and weary. Their branches grow horizontally, and as the tree matures, the lower branches bend down, brushing the ground. The lowermost branches often end up dying due to lack of sunlight, creating a natural hollow under the tree. Crawl under a large pine tree, and what do you find? A soft bed of dried pine needles and a bunch of dried dead branches. With a pocket knife, you can cut away these branches and voila, you've got yourself a shelter. If space is a bit tight, trim some of the lowest live branches to create more headroom. Now let's talk about walls. Cut off some boughs and arrange them around the edges of your shelter. This creates a natural barrier to protect you from the elements. If you can find additional branches from nearby pine trees, use them to reinforce your wall. The pine tree's dense foliage does a remarkable job of shielding you from rain and snow. Sure, you might get an occasional drop, but it's far better than being completely exposed. If there's snow around, you can pile it against your shelter's walls to make it even more windproof. You can even light a fire in your pine tree shelter. However, safety first. A fire too big could turn your cozy shelter into a blazing inferno. So, dig down to the bare earth, moving aside the pine needles before you start your fire. If possible, gather some rocks to act as a hearth. So there you have it. In the wilderness, a pine tree is more than just a tree. It's a lifesaver, offering you shelter from the elements and a place to rest. Now that you have a shelter, let's find something to eat. Did you know you can actually eat parts of a pine tree? You may not believe it, but a pine tree can be a source of nutrition. Yes, you heard it right. A pine tree, often seen as just a landmark or a source of wood, can actually be your dining table when you're out in the wild. Let's start with the needles. These slender, pointed bits of green are not just for show. They can be used to brew a potent tea that's rich in vitamin C. This can be crucial in preventing scurvy, a disease caused by vitamin C deficiency, which could be a real concern in a survival situation. However, it's important to note that not all pine needles are created equal. Some varieties, like the Norfolk Island pine and the ponderosa pine, are poisonous. So it's crucial to accurately identify the species of pine tree before you start brewing your tea. Moving on, we have the inner bark of the pine tree. This part is edible and can be a valuable source of nutrition, but please be mindful when harvesting it. If you strip the bark off all the way around the tree, you'll kill it. So it's better to use the inner bark from fallen trees. This inner bark can be eaten raw, boiled, fried, or even cooked over an open flame. It might not be gourmet dining, but it's a meal nonetheless. Lastly, let's not forget about the pine nuts. Hidden within the pine cones, these little seeds are a treasure trove of nutrition. They're packed with healthy fats, protein, and various essential minerals, but be quick as they are a favorite among woodland creatures. To harvest them, look for fresh pine cones that haven't had time to decompose. In a survival situation, it's all about making the most of what's around you. And as we've learned, a pine tree can be more than just a pretty sight. It can be your shelter, your food, and as we'll discover in the next segment, even your medicine. So, with shelter and food sorted, let's talk about how a pine tree can serve as a source of medicine. In a survival situation, staying healthy is vital, and a pine tree might just be the pharmacy you need. The medicinal uses of pine trees are extensive and have been employed for centuries. One of the core medicinal components of a pine tree is its resin. This sticky substance that seeps out of the tree's bark is a natural antiseptic. It can be applied directly to wounds, acting as both a disinfectant and a protective layer to keep dirt and debris out. The resin also has anti-inflammatory properties. It can be chewed like gum for sore throats and mouth sores. However, it's important to remember not to swallow the resin, as it's not digestible. Next, let's talk about pine needle tea. This is a powerful brew that is high in vitamin C, 5 times more than a lemon in fact, and it's not just a potent source of vitamin C, it's also rich in vitamin A, making it great for eye health. Pine needle tea can be an effective remedy for respiratory problems. The aromatic steam can be inhaled to help clear congested sinuses and lungs. It's also believed that drinking the tea can help to boost the immune system, warding off colds and flu. Making pine needle tea is straightforward. Simply gather a handful of fresh, green pine needles, remove the brown sheaths at the base of the needles, chop them up, and steep them in boiling water for a few minutes. Keep in mind, though, that not all pine species are safe to consume. Some, like the ponderosa pine and the Norfolk Island pine, can be toxic. It's crucial to correctly identify the type of pine tree you're using. So, there you have it. A pine tree can offer not only shelter and sustenance, but also a range of medicinal benefits. It's a survivalist treasure trove, standing tall and ready to assist in your time of need. We've covered shelter, food, and medicine. Now let's find out how a pine tree can provide fuel for warmth and cooking. A fire can mean the difference between life and death in a survival situation, and a pine tree can provide the fuel you need. When the sun dips below the horizon, temperatures can drop dramatically, especially in the wilderness. A fire not only keeps you warm, but it also provides light, deters predators, and can be used for cooking and purifying water. And a pine tree, my friends, is a veritable treasure chest of fuel sources. Firstly, dry pine branches make excellent firewood. They're often abundant around mature trees, and their resinous nature makes them burn hot and bright. If you're lucky enough to find a fallen pine tree, you're in for a treat. These dead trees can provide a significant amount of fuel, enough to keep your fire going for quite a while. But what if you're struggling to get your fire started? That's where pine resin, also known as pine pitch, comes into play. This sticky substance is nature's version of a fire starter. Not only does it catch fire easily, but it also burns slowly, giving your larger pieces of wood more time to catch. You can usually find it oozing out of the tree's bark or in clumps on the forest floor. However, a word of caution. Pine resin produces a lot of smoke when it burns. While this can be great for signaling, it can also give away your location if you're trying to stay hidden. It can also irritate your eyes and respiratory system, so try to avoid inhaling the smoke directly. And let's not forget pine cones. Yes, those prickly nuisances that you've probably stepped on a time or two can actually be useful. When dry, pine cones catch fire easily and burn with a high heat, making them perfect for getting your fire started. So there you have it. Whether it's dry branches for firewood, resin for a fire starter, or pine cones to get things going, a pine tree can provide all the fuel you need for your survival fire. Now you know how versatile a pine tree can be in survival situations. Remember, when in doubt, look for the pine tree.